season draws to a close here with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. A long season has led us around the world over all this year's races to get here. The last chance to settle the season in the final round. The Yas Marina circuit was completed in 2009 and we've seen a fair share of celebration and commiseration over the years since then. The scenery may be spectacular, but this weekend all eyes will be on the track. Only 58 laps stand between the drivers and the checkered flag here under the lights at the Yas Marina circuit. The Haas driver with a chance to impress a few people here.
While 15 isn't ideal, they should be able to move forward in this race.
This should certainly be a good one, folks. Anything could happen. It's the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go.
Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome back to F1 Manager 26. F1 Manager 23, episode 26. Oh my goodness, words. Funny thing is, there was a new update to the game, talking about fixing things that I never saw as problems before. Until now. Post-fixed. They are worse than they were. The things they were talking about that I never saw before, I'm now seeing. Well, anyway, it's Abu Dhabi. It's the last race of the season. It's the dreaded track. Albon has overtaken Florsch. Florsch down to last place. But Sargent starts from P12. Surprising for the last race of the year how many drivers have taken penalties into this race for new components that just weren't good to go. Meanwhile, we have decided to suck it up. No new components. Florsch's engine is in really sad shape. And everything's on the weaker side. It's the last race of the season. We're hanging on by a thread. But we've saved so much money. So much money by using less parts. Florsch, not a single new engine this season. The original 3, she made it on for the entire year. 1 new ERS, 1 new gearbox for the whole season. That was it. Her total bill, and that included all those crashes that she had, her total bill was just $3.5 million. As for Sargent, it's a little bit higher. We did have 1 new engine. That's $5 million right there. And that's a huge cost discrepancy. And he's had a couple major shunts that destroyed things, but we've managed to hang on otherwise. As we are now into lap 3, we need to back off here, especially with the plan for Sargent to be go long. Things do seem to have changed a little bit, like the aggression early on. Maybe just the traffic, but things didn't get held up quite as much. Anyway, for now we are hanging on to that P12. That's good. For Sargent, 1 new engine, $5 million. 2 new ERSs, as twice he's had accidents that have destroyed, and we've had to replace. That's $5 million right there total, so that's $10 million on the car, and 2 new gearboxes, so a total of $12 million. 15.5 between the 2 cars is all we added for engine components throughout the year. From what we've seen in terms of penalties with other drivers, that's big. All right, now, final race of the season. What are we racing for? Well, the only thing that matters, because I really don't want to move up the point standings, 9th and 8th are essentially the same outcome, if you ask me, and what's going to happen. Our objective for the year was to finish 7th. So finishing 8th is still failing the objective. Finishing 9th is still finishing the objective. But race by race is going to matter more. Staying above the budget threshold is going to matter more. So various other obstacles don't seem as important. If we finish 9th, okay, we get a 4 or 5 million less, 3 million less in terms of prize money for the end of the season here. Within a second, did not get DRS, but didn't look like anybody had DRS there. But we lost some ground. In fact, we're out to 1.3 now. Coming back within a second and opening up a healthy gap behind us. This is what it's important right now positionally.
So what DRS?
Copy that.
0.7 and 1.6 away from those guys. If we can pull away from them, that's going to be our race going the right direction. I'll explain more on that in just a second here. Back on finishing, 8th or 9th. Right, we're 1 point behind AlphaTauri. They've scored 3 points all year. We've scored 2. And we've scored 2 points in the last, 3 races? 2 10th place finishes. The idea that moving up to 8th would mean a little more prize money, 4 million, whatever. We still fail the objective. What it would mean is less tunnel time, less hours next year. If they changed our pit boxes, if we actually moved pit boxes, I'd want to finish 8th. That's more important than the prize money. Far more important than the prize money. And the tunnel time is definitely more important than the prize money. So for me, I'll happily take a 9th place finish. We've done something with the finances that have, yes, okay, fine, that 4 million would be important, but not as serious as the tunnel time. Not as serious as a pit box improvement would be. And therefore, I'm content with 9th. Especially as there's no gain in terms of how the sponsors would evaluate a 9th versus an 8th. I'm also hopeful that by finishing 9th, it's going to temper the expectations on next season a little bit as we come up and challenge Norris here. We both have DRS. There's a crash, yellow flag, and we've tucked back in. Is that because there's Alfa Romeo and a Haas? Magnussen is one of them.
And the contact between
Come
the
together in
cars,
the chicane.
inevitable. Now their confidence will have taken.
So we remain in 13th. Sonoda is now 3 seconds behind, so we are pulling away from them. Now our group is also dropping off the front 10, so to potentially get points today, it is going to involve some sort of issue. It's going to involve Bottas with a 5-second penalty for that collision. Let's see what we're looking at alternate strategy wise. Oh, the whole back end on softs. Wow. Whole front end on mediums. One stopper, I don't know how many are going to opt for it. That's a different strategy that I wouldn't suspect too many cars are going to go for. But the 2-stopper is only roughly 1 second faster for overall race pace. I think track position matters a little bit more. I'll sacrifice 1 second over cutting out a pit stop. Also important in cutting out a pit stop is something that I have done. I've sabotaged myself a little bit here, or a lot. Noticing how the pit crew game mechanic is built on developing your pit crew. I don't mind following Norris if Norris stays in DRS range of Hamilton. Getting around Norris and losing Hamilton does not sound ideal, and that appears to be what's about to happen here. So the position over Norris versus keeping up with the pace of Hamilton, I prefer keeping up with the pace of Hamilton, and that is no longer going to be the case as Norris is falling off, and we will eventually, with DRS, get around him here. I mean, we are all over the back of him. This might be a good time to actually do something along the lines of, say, topping up and hang out behind him for a little bit as we do fall off. But anyway, what was I saying? I lost track. Train of thought here. The aggressive thing. So the way the pit stop development or pit crew development works in this game, maximizing development versus avoiding complications, avoiding fatigue. Fatigue doesn't carry over into the new year, but you lose so much of what you gained over the course of the season. So in order to develop your pit crew, there's a trade-off. There's an absolute trade-off, and we have absolutely recovered here, but we have also lost a lot of ground on Norris. So back to neutral. The trade-off for me is I've gone into this final race weekend and these final months of the year training like crazy. Really, really putting a lot of emphasis on pit crew development, which will be great for next year. We're going to lose a bunch of it, but we were going to lose a bunch of it anyway. Starting from a higher point means you'll start the new year from a higher point. And one thing that doesn't carry over, seemingly, is the fatigue. The fatigue goes away. The fatigue resets. Hamilton has caught and passed Piastri, and Piastri has already dropped off Hamilton, and now we find ourselves within about 1 second of Piastri. So the McLarens are going backwards. They're absolutely going backwards here. It's only about 14. Find ourselves getting within about a second. Let's ensure that we do make it within a second here. And then we can do the same thing once again. We can close up on him. Maybe get out of the range of Norris here. See him fall off. That would be nice. Meanwhile, the tailing group is at 5 seconds. We've actually still managed to pull away from them even without... Oh my gosh, look how fast we caught Piastri. That was not intentional. We get DRS once and we close down the second and overtake him just like that. That brings us all the way up to P11 right now. Hamilton, meanwhile, though, has pulled away. He's 2.7 away from us. So much for some other alternate strategy of trying to recover a little more battery or trying to recover some fuel or trying to conserve the tires for a little bit. No, none of that's going to happen here. We are just simply beyond the McLarens. We've been able to outpace them here, maybe because we're light on fuel.
The window is open. Copy.
But training like crazy to develop our pit crew has led to high fatigue. High fatigue means we are very likely to see mistakes on pit stops for this, the final race of the year. A race that doesn't matter enough. We're not competing for anything. I'm going to be frustrated when we have a mistake on a pit stop. But I feel the trade-off to get our pit crew to a significantly better state to start next season, that trade-off is going to be worth it. Today, it's going to hurt. Today, Sargent sitting in P10 right now, but really virtual P11. Gosh, he's on the edge of the points. Oh no, we're going to lose 5 seconds. We'd be behind the McLarens again. That 5 seconds, that trade-off, it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it long term. So, suck it up, deal with it. Flourish will be pitting soon. Currently P18 because Magnussen and Bottas have already pit. But more or less has kept up so far in this race with a really weak engine and a 60 rating. Claire with pit stop issue. We're not going to be the only ones. There's a lot of penalties in the field today, so there's a lot of new components out there. So even though we are very much at the end of the life of our components, others, they're not. They're doing just fine. Anyway, it's lap 18. Fuel recovery is happening, but only slowly. We're going to have to lift and coast at some stage in this race. We've pulled away from the McLarens now, but we're also over 4 seconds behind Hamilton. So that gap is opening kind of both directions, but also, the AlphaTauris have already pit. So I suppose that's not a suitable comparison at this point on where they're at. But there's a healthy gap behind us, a really healthy gap, but there's definitely cars that have not pit. But that means there's a lot of two-stoppers happening today because Flourish hasn't even pit, and she's on the two-stop strategy. So we have really, really opened up a gap, and cutting out a full pit stop, with the kind of pace that we're able to maintain right now, suggests that we're in a pretty good state. Potentially, we'll see what the pace difference is right now. We did great until everybody pit. They're gonna have better pace. How much better versus the full pit stop that we are saving? And saving a pit stop, crucial today, with the high chance of mistakes. Florsch, meanwhile, she's pitting twice. She's doubling her chance of mistakes. Florsch diving off into the pits for her first stop. Fingers crossed. There's got to be at least one mistake today out of 3 pit stops. So far, so good. She's lucked out 2.252. Sargent will be the next one to pit before she then has her third and final stop. She's going to come out back in last place, of course, 10 seconds behind, which isn't too bad. It's not too bad of a spot to be in. On these hards, we're going to do a little mix of pushing for her, as I think she can handle it. On these hards, they can definitely be pushed harder. They're not going to wear as fast. We're not going to spend as long on them. It's really about the longevity of the softs and the mediums, and you don't want to be on the hards that long here based on the race strategy. So assuming that the hards really aren't fast, and Sargent might not actually be losing a ton of ground here, but we're going to be on those hards for a long time at the end of this race. And obviously having to go much longer, which means we'll have to conserve for Sargent. But for Florsch, it's worth it to try to be a little more aggressive. Meanwhile, Sargent, virtual right now, remember, what virtual we're P11, but actual at the moment, we're all the way up at P7. Still ahead of those McLarens. We've still managed to pull away from those McLarens, and we continue to lose ground to Hamilton, now just over 5 seconds as Florsch runs wide. Seen of late that compounds into other mistakes half a lap later, or a few corners later. Like you pick up grass, or you pick up gravel, like dust, or just get off that racing line and pick up that extra rubber, whatever the case may be. The mistake adds to another mistake. So getting through the rest of this lap, because we've definitely gone over half a lap now, getting through the rest of this lap should ensure that she's okay and does not immediately crash again. Yeah, that's one full lap now. Perez has caught and overtaken Sargent. Perez had just pit. Let's hope that Sargent can keep up. Down to 35%. The pit stop is going to be happening fairly soon. No, we're already 1.7 behind. Going through those corners, the Red Bull is so superior. We lost 2 seconds. We lost 2 seconds in Sector 3. Yikes. Man, that is massively off the pace. 2 seconds in one sector. Ocon has caught us, passed us. Sainz Leclerc also coming back at us. Sonoda is now 11 seconds, about 13 seconds behind when you add it all together. So has already covered quite a bit of ground. But we are literally at our worst right now and pitting fairly soon. How soon are we supposed to pit? Oof, that's going to be rough. We're going to be really pushing the limit here. We might have to pit 1 lap earlier. The hards are supposed to be a little bit better. And we did the beginning of race extra push for 2 laps. That Sargent, last one to pit. 4 cars at the front on the same strategy as us are all pitting this lap. So Sargent is the final car to pit. And it's still going to be 1 lap early compared to what was expected. But you know what? We need to pit this lap. We are way off pace at the moment. Virtual safety car. Multiple cars have crashed. Well, there's good timing for that pit stop. We're going to lose less time. And nobody else is going to pit right now because they've all just pit. All of them. We got a Haas. We got a McLaren. Direct competitors. Lando Norris. Somebody was right there with us. Oh, gosh. We have a Haas on fire.
And for the crew
We've
watching
all
on in
seen
the
that.
garage, that really must have
Definitely
been a
not the
hard
severity of the Grosjean crash. But this is brilliant timing for Sargent. Is there a reason to pit for Florsch right now? So Sargent is going to dive off into the pits from P6. This is our one and only stop of the day, folks, and we get to do it under VSC with nobody else pitting and no mistake. 2.651 is not a quick stop, but it is essentially error-free. Go standard. Fuel recovery is happening right now. We come out in P12. But almost everyone around us is going to be pitting again. We saw 4 cars going late, pitting, one lap earlier than us? We saw, I think, 1 car pitting the lap before, so there's maybe 5 others that are on a one-stop strategy, which means compared to them, we are 6th. We are behind them all. They are all front runners, but
VSC
we just pit under VSC. So not only are we a full pit stop better off than everybody else, we are essentially a pit stop and a half because of the VSC. We lost less time comparatively. And all these guys around us are all going to be pitting again. Russell, Hamilton, Stroll, Tsunoda are all going to pit again. Piastri, Albon, Bottas, all those guys behind us are all going to pit again. And we are now good to go the distance. And our fuel has just gotten a hell of a lot better here at the almost halfway point of this race. 1 lap to go on that. This has gone really well for us. Okay, here's your comparative could be going. Perez is definitely pitting. Ocon's definitely pitting. Leclerc and Sainz are definitely pitting. They've been on those hards. You can see similar strategy to what Florsch is doing. All of those cars behind us are definitely pitting. Tsunoda, VSC, another VSC. Tsunoda involved.
Contact at turn 1. Debris ahead at turn 1.
We just saw.
Here we go, heading into turn
We just
1.
saw his percent drop really, really quickly.
And
Self-inflicted,
that's the moment
just
the
locks
car
up,
plows
goes
into the
off,
wall.
hits the
That would have
wing.
knocked their
He'll be able to
confidence, I'm
continue
sure.
on, but that's going to knock him back behind us, no doubt. Oh, Sonoda's out. Oh, I thought he'd be able to continue on, but it looks like he might have taken some right front suspension damage. Well, that rules out 3 competitors. Right now, Sargent could be scoring multiple points today at this, but 3 of those cars that are out, they're all behind us. It's about the guys in front of us. And the guys in front of us, Russell, Gasly, Hamilton, Stroll, they look like they're going to go the distance. Ocon pitting right now. Is he going to put on mediums, or has he got another set of hards to put? He's got hards. He's going to go the distance. So we're now looking at 3 cars left in front. Perez, Leclerc, and Sainz. That all must pit. Everybody else is going to go the distance. Bottas, Magnussen have pit. They are done for the day on that. So things have changed. A lot of cars are going to try to go the distance now. And I don't think the Ferraris are close enough. They were behind us after the first pit stop. I don't think that they'll be close enough to be behind us after the second pit stop. I think they're going to be on those hards for a while, and they're going to pull away, even though ours are fresher. I do think that they'll have enough pace to still pull away further. They had been, 8 seconds behind us? I think they had already covered off a good 6 seconds of that when we did eventually pit. They were only a couple seconds back. So that is ground I think they'll easily make up over the next 10-15 laps until they end up pitting. And therefore, I don't think I'm racing anyone ahead of me. I think we're still looking at a P11 situation. But the good news is Piastri and Albon have to pit again. I don't think that they're going to be a threat. They're 13 seconds back, and then it's another 13 to the other guys that are now good to go the distance. So there's really no threats out there. Florsch just 10 seconds down on Zhou. I think our race situation just got pretty clear, and we don't have to conserve. There's no race beyond today, so at some point we can try to push. Florsch looks to be in a good state for that. We'll save it for the final stint, especially if she has a chance to close up. But yeah, we're 10 seconds behind Hamilton now. Just 8 behind Stroll, but if they're all going the distance, that's that, folks. I think our race is going to be a lonely one the rest of the way, and we should be theoretically a comfortable P11, assuming that there's no more accidents anywhere, anywhere on the grid, including us. Zhou has done the final pit stop and come out behind Florsch, so for now, Florsch is ahead of him, though he has just overtaken her. Let's go ahead and turn this into a battle here, and watch with Florsch. Can she... she's already 3 seconds back. What the heck? That happened way too fast. Alright, ease off. Just finish your stint. She's going to pit here real soon. And as far as what I was driving for today, objectively, like I said, I didn't want to be necessarily moving up the grid in the standings. But the day, being successful on the day, making the board happy on the day, I do want. And right now, we are ahead of both McLarens. We're ahead of both Alfa Romeos, we're ahead of both Alfa Tauris, and we're ahead of both Haas cars. That means we are 6th place on the day. Board's going to love that. So that's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Hey, stupid blue flags. 3 blue flags there. 4 cars go by Florsch. Wow. Should have pitted her there. Should have pitted her there. We now have a huge gap to the next set of cars. Final pit stop of the year. Somehow we have managed to escape without incident in the first 2. Would not be surprised at all if we get one here. The odds were certainly in favor of having a mistake. But the pit crew has managed to get through the day without error. 2 slower pit stops. Certainly not fast, but that is easily acceptable. And I've definitely changed strategy. No, we are not going flat out here. In fact, we're going to just get up to temperature a little bit and ease off. The only thing is, unfortunately, she's not actually racing anyone. Sainz has pit and come out behind Sargent. Did not expect that. Did not expect to still be ahead of one of the Ferraris when they eventually came around and pit. But with brand new tires, they have more pace and are obviously faster. Leclerc has also pit, so they've both come out. Leclerc came out ahead, Sainz came out just behind, and now they go off into the sunset and start gaining positions. The one to keep an eye on is what's happening ahead or behind. Piastri has pit. That's brought him behind Bottas. We are nearly half a minute ahead of those guys in no man's land. Ahead of us, same strategy. Not the Ferraris, but Stroll. Stroll is the one to keep an eye on. And yeah, we're not close enough. In fact, meanwhile, Florsch is 5 seconds closer to Zhou than she was. So the brand new softs adding some pace, and you can see how she's continually getting closer. Let's go ahead and use this last race. Nothing to save it for anymore. Use that beat up engine and see if she can get a little closer. Lap 54. Fuel's good. Tires are good. Everything's hanging on. We are back within 8 seconds of Stroll. Well ahead of Piastri, who is coming at us with the extra pit stop, but so far behind that it's not a threat. But 7 seconds? Could we get into the points? We might as well try. Oh, there's the fuel used up. Okay, that's it. Florsch has pushed. She got what she got out of it. She's also now below that 60%. She'll lose a little more pace. But she got to 23 seconds down. She gained 10 seconds on Zhou over the last 8 laps or so. That's awesome to see. Still a worry, though, as to how we're eventually going to get her competitive. We have a car that's capable of doing this with a weak driver, and then we have a weaker driver that is well off the back. So how do you piece that together? 5 seconds behind. Okay, let's go ahead and push for the last lap. Do we want to make a mistake and go backwards? Not really. Only 3 cars a lap down. Okay. Not too bad. 50 seconds behind. And now within 4 seconds of Stroll. In the season with a really, really good result. Just no points this time. I was a little worried that other teams brought some late upgrades to the car, where I've been
Stick the flag.
focusing on research for next
That's
year.
P11.
Uh,
P11.
the research for next year
Everybody
seems
should
to
be
have
super
more
proud of
benefit than the
Factor.
current
I think you did a very good
upgrades
job.
seem to do.
Okay, check it
We'll
out.
see how we're looking for next
17.
season. Obviously,
Good
from
for the
here,
football,
we
right?
move
Big
into
one.
off-season mode. We're going to try to get through the end of December here, still within this episode. That's P11 for Sargent, P17 for Florsch. Final standings: Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Sainz, and Alonso are the top 5 this year. Sargent was 15th with 2 points. Florsch was last. And then in the constructors, it's Red Bull, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Mercedes, and Alpine. In the bottom half, we have McLaren, Haas, AlphaTauri with 3, ourselves with 2, and Alfa Romeo never scored a point this season. It's a 9th place in the constructors, but you can see the groundwork there for probably a P7 in the coming season, depending on how other cars develop. We're beating McLaren here at the end of the season, but barely. I don't think that's something we can count on. They're going to have better facilities. They're probably going to outdevelop us, most likely. But can we finish ahead of the bottom 3 consistently and be 7th next year? I feel like we can score more points for sure, and I do feel like there's a much better chance of being a P7 in the constructors next year compared to what we had this year. Let's just hope that the board, where we only managed to finish P9, does not suddenly have ambitions that exceed the actual results. They targeted 7th this year. I would love to see them target 7th again next year. The one good pit stop we had, where we didn't lose a little bit of time, was second best on the day. That's definitely the quickest one we've put in this year, and our final standings for the fastest pit stop, the DHL fastest pit stop competition, was 6th. Huge progress from being 9th or 10th the year before. And with the movement we're making here late in the season, I'm hoping to push us up a bit higher to start next year. This will certainly help for the coming year with a new wind tunnel upgrade complete. Here's your podium for the F2 Championship. With the payout from that final race, we now have 32 million, plenty of money for car development for the coming season, but especially for part development, that kind of car development, right? Not just the engine that we're putting into the year or anything like that, and taking care of the build of the car, but continually pumping out research between now and the end of December, and then design work from December 1st on until we begin the year. So we can be very aggressive with car design over the next, 3 months, 4 months, and see a lot of development, and that could push us to a different level than where we're at right now. And with 2 recent facility upgrades in terms of car development facilities, as we have the wind tunnel now upgraded, the simulator recently upgraded, car part test center recently upgraded. You can see the condition is way down on these other ones, but I really do not want to be spending that money right now unless we get to the first of the year and see that money's not going to be an issue at that point. We get enough financing from the board, we're set up well enough, then I don't know which one to go with at that point. Definitely not the factory. I'm not worried about the factory, but the design center, especially in really poor condition, might be a good one, or the suspension simulator. Certainly one of those two I would like to see an investment in. It's only $10 million for the suspension simulator, only $11.5 for the design center. Yeah, that would be a very good choice. Extra 70,000, 50, 60,000 for upkeep. The biggest regulation change for the coming year is to the wings, and we've already completed 2 front wing research projects. I'm going to go ahead and do a third. We're not committing a ton of time, but I still have a little bit of time left for one more upgrade. We've got another project done in a few days, so we'll be able to get on with that here before the end of the season, but it's November the 22nd right now. So 3 research projects. I'm keeping everything balanced at this point. It's a lot easier, and from what I've heard, the research mechanic is kind of broken on when you change these. I don't know if that's factual still, or if that was just on release, but either way, straight improvement for the car is good across the board. And seeing where we're at when we come into the season is just fine with me. We can then pick our more specific direction, our focus direction on what we want to improve at that point. But lots and lots of little research projects, lots of research gains. It's got to make the car better. And you never know. Maybe it's going to force the board into picking us for 6th, but I'm really hoping that they're going to look at recent performances and calculate that into where they think we should be. Because in constructors, we're only 9th. I'm hoping that plays a role. I know I've said that multiple times now, but I'm really wanting to reiterate that point. Latest driver development, even though I changed it away from focusing on adaptability, Florsch once again develops in adaptability, another +2 there. Oh no, it was smoothness that she was picking up so much. Now it's adaptability that she's picking up rapidly, a 79 there. She does add 1 to cornering. Meanwhile, Sargent also adds 1 to cornering, an 83 now, and an 80 in adaptability. He's becoming a respectable driver, for sure. He's still got a ways to go yet, but Florsch, a little more pace. We need her to improve her braking a bit at this stage. I think I've finally gotten to the bottom of the system for the turn of the year and the negatives that you're going to encounter. December can train, December can lead to fatigue, December can be tricky for you. Or you can figure it out. The standard training that they offer is going to see big negatives across the board. There's a drop point, and you have to get over a certain threshold to get away from that drop point. You could focus on specifics and leave some of the drop points. Like my car release is a 69 of 85, where everything else is a bit lower. So maybe I could forget car release and focus on actually making gains. For now, I've covered all of the pit crew attributes, the negatives. I've even added a +1 in jacks. I've covered the losses for car building, bringing it up slightly. What I haven't been able to cover without going into fatigue is the estimated pit stop time increase. It's not drastic, but there's a definite increase. I've not gotten out of that minimum kind of threshold. And in fact, I could theoretically take out that gym training and still have that minimum drop. So I'm going to go back in a little bit more, because 0.3 is all it's going to be, period. We're only going to lose 0.03. We could then focus on that at the beginning of the year, covering off everything else that's lost. So not losing anything, but losing a little bit of pit stop time. And then at the beginning of the year, we could focus on making that our gain. Every month has a little trade-off. You have to cover. There's always a plus minus to what you do, and you have to balance that. But if we can take the loss that's going to come in one category, cover off the other areas, and even make better the other areas, and come out without the fatigue to start the new month, we can then cover off that pit stop time, because it seems to not want to let you cover that off. I mean, you have to have pretty much straight training of pit stop time, and you're still going to lose the 0.03 over the month of December. So just removing it from the equation entirely could be a way to make the pit crew better in other areas, and then just go back and recover that time elsewhere. A little min-maxing to help us out. So sure enough, I've figured it out. So the estimated pit stop time in the first week or two has a different impact than the rest of the month has. But I've got us all the way down to 0% fatigue at the end of the month, right on the edge of that. But I've also managed to now add in extra sessions to jacks are +3, use tires off. Like, we're gaining instead of losing. Car build, same, a little bit of a gain. And the estimated pit stop time has no change whatsoever, even though we're not training it. 8th of December, latest research project completed, and I now have not enough time. There's no longer enough days left in the year to get any projects with the number of engineers that I have remaining complete. So our final tally on research projects, not the outcome of them, but chassis is 1. I'm 1 engineer one additional engineer available away from getting one more chassis research project squeezed in before the end of the year, but we just come up a little short. So one chassis project. We are on our third front wing project. We're on our second rear wing project. We've done one side pod project, one underfloor project, and we are on our first and only suspension project, with those all finishing up just in time. That they're going to make a pretty good boost to the car. That's not a huge amount of research. We did start awfully late on it, but I think we've at least matched, or should roughly match, what everybody else is doing. End of season. We were 6th in the fastest pit stop. That's $5.5 million that we pick up for that. Board confidence is medium entering our end of season evaluation, so I think we should be just fine. Of course, 9th in the constructors. Our team rating, is that up or down? Hard to say. That, of course, critically failed. Ooh, gosh. That's worse than last year's evaluation, isn't it? Maybe we did need that 8th. Uh-oh. Team principal rating showing as a 0. The team rating, constructors, went up by 2 points. Team rating went up by 2 points. But do I still have a job? That is worrying. The critical failure for finishing 9th. Board confidence says medium. 750,000. It's hard to say. Do I still have a job or not? Of course, our regulation change. The focus is going to be on low speed cornering with a 30% drop, 20 for medium, 10 for high speed, and a $5 million drop in the cost cap in the coming season. Our new season target says 7th, with essentially the same goal of, we still have one more year to complete. Folks, it looks like we do have our job for another year. Maybe only just because of the critical failure of finishing 9th instead of 7th. The partial failure of 8th might have been a better thing to have gotten. I will once again favor Florsch and her development, so Sargent is going to be handling the appearances and maximizing those to get some extra funds for the car. And so our funding for the upcoming season, $104 million coming in. We're going to get a lump sum of just shy of $18 million to start, and then we're going to get a little over $3.25 million per race, which is roughly what we got last season. Now, I'm worried about one thing, even though it says our objective, our new season objective is 7th or above. One thing I'm worried about is it showed this last year, and then it showed 8th. And then we went in, and it suddenly was 7th. I'm worried that it's going to kind of recalculate once we get in, and that this 7th is really just what last year's objective was. But with the balance, our end of season balance was $36 million. Prize money, additional $4 million sponsor funding, that 17.8 lump sum, the board payments of $6.6 million, but then the facility staff car development cost $30 million to develop a car, and the entry fee for the year of $500,000 brings us to an incoming of $28.7 million, an outgoing of $33.9 million, bringing us to $31 million, which that is a good sum of money, but we still need to get our engine. That's going to be costly, and then of course all that car development that we're going to be feeding into will drain that pretty quickly. Car development, so beginning with the chassis, no change in the regulations, meaning the one research project we did is bringing in an additional 1.5%. The others that were unchanged, the side pods, with our upgrade there, it's a hefty one of 3 to 4% across the board. The underfloor, again, unchanged. Kilonewtons wise, minor gains, but we're looking at 2 to 2.5% in the airflow and velocity, meaning it's a pretty healthy upgrade. The side pod one was a very solid upgrade. The underfloor was a healthy one. The chassis was pretty weak. The suspension, more of a healthy, we're looking at 2% plus, 2.25%. A little bit of gain in the downforce area, and right about 2% for the airflow and drag reduction. Drag reduction 1.93%, the airflow front 2.18%. And that takes us to the two that have the regulation change. We counteracted those. Now we put a little more into the front wing than the rear wing. We only had 2 upgrades in the rear wing, so let's start with that one. The gain versus the loss. We lose a little bit in high-speed downforce. We lose a little bit more in medium speed, and we lose a fair bit in low speed. Those two upgrades did not cover enough. We are going to be worse in the rear wing than we were before. We lose 8% in the airflow sensitivity, but we recover 5, losing about 3.25. But we do make gains, drag reduction 2.5%, and 3.33 for the DRS delta. So for the rear wing, bit of a loss. Almost offset though. Not really though. Not really. It is a bit of a loss. Front wing, we had 3 research projects though. We put more time, more effort into the front wing. Have we counteracted that one? Well, we're going to gain 4% in brake cooling, so that's good. We do offset the high speed. It comes out the same. Medium speed though does see a little bit of a loss. Marginal. A bit more. 0.3 kilonewtons lost in low speed cornering, so we are going to be a bit worse off low speed cornering at the start of the season. The airflow sensitivity mostly covered off, all but 2%, and the airflow front, big gains there, over 4%. We definitely came closer to offsetting the front wing losses than we did the rear wing, but both take a little bit of a hit, but then we make gains in other areas of the car, meaning I'd say we are roughly as fast as we were before all the research projects. Let's hope that 30, 20, 10% losses are going to impact some other teams more than it did us, and I'd say at the very least we should be neutral coming out of this compared to other teams, I would think. By the way, the gap between 8th and 9th in prize share is 3.2 million. So not a bad drop, not a bad trade-off for the extra wind tunnel time. No other sporting reg changes for the year. Even though the Mercedes engine did not produce a winner in the last year, and it definitely has a little bit less power than all of the others. That power loss threshold being significantly lower, the wear resistance being nearly the highest, the thermal resistance being excellent, and then having good fuel efficiency, better gearbox durability than all but one, and nearly as good as the other one, but then having significantly better ERS durability. You got to think of kind of what's the trade-off. The gearbox is the cheap one, so you can afford to have a bad gearbox. The ERS gets a bit more expensive, but it's the engine. It's the engine that's crazy expensive. So having better wear resistance, especially that Red Bull that does not have the wear resistance, right? It might be a fast engine, but it loses power fast, and the wear resistance is poor, so you have to replace it more frequently. Red Bull's expensive. Mercedes is going to help us save money, and as we're still working our way up the grid, saving money long term is going to have a lot of benefits as we continually improve facilities, continually pump research projects into the car to make the car competitive. Having an engine that can help save us 5-10 million a year, 15 million a year is going to be worthwhile, and also saving us a couple gearboxes over the course of the season, saving us an ERS over the course of a season is worth it long term. So we're going to stick with the Mercedes for now. So the internal development, we're just going to do our January 1st and call this an episode. So 2024 performance versus 25. We have a bit more pace, but our acceleration has fallen off a little bit. DRS effectiveness has improved by 5%. Our low speed cornering has definitely taken a hit. We noticed that one. The medium speed cornering is almost identical. It is a drop, but it's very slight drop. And the high speed likewise has a very small drop. We will recover the medium speed and high speed quite easily. That low speed is going to take a bit more to recover. Our upgrades before the start of the season will have us better in medium speed and high speed than we were at the end of last season. Meanwhile, we've made gains in other areas, right? That better top speed. 1/4 of a kilometer an hour is not a lot, but it's something. That acceleration, that's going to take a little bit more to cover off, but we're already 5% better in that DRS effectiveness. We're already 0.6 better in dirty dirty air tolerance. It's not significant, but it's okay. Brake cooling, 9% we have gained already. Engine cooling, 9% that we have gained there as well. That's significant. That is definitely significant. It's the low speed cornering and the acceleration that have taken a little bit of a hit with those new regulations that we haven't quite covered off, and we're going to want to work on maybe a focus on some low speed cornering in particular, and a little more focus on acceleration for the coming year. Pit crew performance drops. We're looking at 6s and 7s, front and rear jacks, 6s and 7s, yeah. In 8 in car release, that was our highest one. Sees a little bit bigger drop. Looks like there might be some sort of percentage involved. The ones that were lower to begin with, the drop was less significant. The one that's higher, drop was more significant. Car setup, 6, speed, 7. And one final driver development update for the year. We have a +1 in braking for Florsch, finally. Finally, we've been waiting for that for a long time. Adaptability +1 for Sargent, and accuracy +1 for Florsch. So 2 driving standards improvements for her. That's big, plus that cornering one at the end of the season. So we've gained 3 points in lap pace. That's good. So without a change in the engine, we still have 31 million entering the season. Plenty to put into upgrades. Also plenty to spend 11 million on a facility upgrade. So we're going to go ahead and do that as well. I think the design center is the one that we need to get going. It's going to be done in 84 days. Let's go ahead and get that upgrade on the go. That leaves us with 19 million to make a wide number of upgrades before the start of the season. One thing we've got to be careful of, for one, we're going to have the February start of the month, so we'll have a payday there. January will be soon after that first race, so we'll have the payday in that first race plus right after. So there's more money being fed in a little bit, but we've got to be careful now that we are choosing to spend that 11 million, that it's going to make things a little bit tighter in terms of the upgrades that we can make in the short term. And as for the pit crew development side, just the standard training that they have set, I'm going to go in and customize that and work on it. But you can see kind of where we're at to start the year. Car building down to 43%, estimated pit stop starting at 2.536 before I go in and focus training. So we lose 1/10 of a second, but a 2.5 is still, I think, a little bit better than where we started last year. And you can see just how big the gains are to start the year. Much bigger than where we finished the year, where it was hard to get any gains. So I'm going to really be able to go through and manipulate this how I want. The car building in particular can be traded off for other things. Car release, we obviously are going to want to at least neutralize. It's our highest right now, but I've got to get those going a little bit more. It's still tricky on how to make this work just right, how to balance it. But that's going to do it for this episode. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.